Undercover black CEO applies for a loan in his own bank. Could not believe what he hears from two bank employees behind him. The bank lobby was busy, filled with customers going about their business. A man in a simple hoodie and jeans stood patiently in line, watching the transactions unfold. He noticed something. Some customers were greeted warmly, offered coffee, and guided through their processes with ease. Others, like him, were met with cold stares and dismissive tones. His turn was coming up, but he had already heard enough to know this visit wouldn't be a smooth one. "That guy in the hoodie, bet he's gonna ask for a handout," whispered one employee to another. "Yeah, let's see how fast we can send him packing." Little did they know, the man they were about to humiliate wasn't just any customer. He was the CEO of the entire bank. David Carter, a self-made millionaire, and the CEO of Carter National Bank, had spent years building his business on the principles of fairness and opportunity. He believed that banking should serve everyone, regardless of their background. But recently, disturbing complaints had begun to surface. Stories of minority customers being denied loans without reason, spoken to with condescending tones, or treated like second-class citizens in his own institution. At first, he thought it was an isolated issue, a misunderstanding. But as the reports piled up, a sickening pattern emerged. It wasn't just one complaint or one branch, it was systemic. And that realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He couldn't ignore it. He wouldn't. So he made a decision. He wouldn't just review reports or hold meetings from the safety of his office. No, he needed to see it for himself, to feel what his customers were feeling, to walk into one of his own branches as just another man. No wealth, no reputation, no boardroom authority. He became someone else, a new name, a fresh account. No expensive suit, no polished shoes, no assistant trailing behind him. Just a simple hoodie, worn-out jeans, and sneakers. An everyday man looking for a fair shot. As David pushed open the glass doors of the bank, a blast of cool air greeted him. The lobby was sleek, modern, and pristine, designed to make customers feel welcome. But as he stepped inside, he felt something else entirely. The warmth in the air wasn't for him. Clusters of well-dressed customers, most of them white, chatted comfortably with bankers, receiving friendly smiles and nods. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit laughed as a loan officer patted him on the back, offering what seemed like an effortless approval. A young woman with designer heels and a Louis Vuitton bag was being guided to a private office, where she was handed bottled water before even asking. David, in his hoodie and jeans, received no such treatment. Instead, he felt a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in energy as he walked toward the line. A quick glance from a teller before she turned away. A security guard eyeing him a little too long, hand resting near his belt. A hushed whisper from two employees standing near the entrance. "Look at this one," one of them muttered. "Probably here to cash a check from some under-the-table job," the other replied with a smirk. David's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. This was exactly why he was here. As he waited in line, he watched transaction after transaction unfold. The ease, the casualness, the unspoken trust between the bank employees and certain customers. A businessman in front of him received a warm greeting and a seamless service experience. No interrogation, no skepticism, just respect. Then his number was called. He stepped forward. The loan officer barely looked up, his expression one of immediate impatience. His suit was crisp, his tie perfectly knotted, but his eyes held the kind of disinterest that made David's stomach turn. "You're here for what?" he asked, voice flat, as if the very idea of David's presence was absurd. "A loan," David said, his tone steady. "I'd like to discuss my options." The banker let out a short, almost amused breath through his nose. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. "Really? Do you have pay stubs? Proof of steady income? A credit history over 700? David reached into his pocket and pulled out the documents. He had come prepared. The paperwork was immaculate, the same that any other applicant would provide. He slid them across the desk. The banker barely glanced at them before shaking his head. "This won't work." David kept his posture relaxed, though his heart pounded in his chest. "Why not?" The banker sighed as if this was a conversation he had no patience for. "Listen, I just don't think you qualify. People in Your situation usually struggled to meet our requirements? Maybe a smaller loan? A payday advance, perhaps? David clenched his jaw. He had just watched a man before him walk away with a loan approval and a handshake, with half the paperwork David had provided. But now suddenly, the bank had standards. His blood boiled, but his voice remained calm. "What situation am I in exactly?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. The banker stiffened, shifting uncomfortably. "I just meant, we have standards." David wasn't done testing them yet. David stepped aside, his fingers curling into his palms as he forced himself to remain silent. He needed to see just how deep this bias ran. The next customer in line, a young white man in a designer jacket with a watch that probably cost more than some people's rent, strolled up to the counter. The same loan officer who had just dismissed David barely moments ago now straightened up, his entire demeanor shifting. His tone was lighter, friendly, welcoming. "Good afternoon, sir. What can we do for you today?" The young man smiled. "I'm looking to get a loan, thinking about investing in some real estate." Unlike David, he didn't reach for a folder of neatly arranged documents. No tax returns, no proof of steady income, just a casual shrug as he added, "I've got some savings." The banker didn't hesitate. "Not a problem at all," he said, clicking away on his keyboard with enthusiasm. "Let's get you started. We'll take care of you right away." David felt his stomach twist. The ease, the instant trust, the willingness to help. He had played this scene out in his mind before walking in, but now that he was witnessing it firsthand, it cut deeper than he expected. He had spent years building a bank that was supposed to be different, a bank where opportunity was for everyone. But right in front of him, in his own institution, was proof that reality told a different story. His pulse pounded in his ears. Every fiber of his being told him to speak up, to call it out, to force this man to explain why one customer was treated like an asset and the other like a liability. But before he could open his mouth, fate intervened. And in that moment, everything changed. The doors to the bank swung open, and a gust of air swept through the lobby. Conversations halted, heads turned. Striding inside was Mr. Phillips, a man of stature, wealth, and undeniable presence. The kind of client banks fought to keep happy. His tailored suit was crisp, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor as he made his way inside. He took one glance around the room, scanning the faces, before his gaze landed on David. And then his expression changed. His eyes widened in recognition, his usual composed demeanor giving way to genuine surprise. "David," his voice carried across the silent lobby. "What are you doing here?" The entire room froze. The very employees who had just dismissed David as unworthy now stared at him in stunned silence. The loan officer, who had spoken to him with condescension, suddenly looked like he had swallowed glass. The banker stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. You know him?" Mr. Phillips let out a hearty chuckle, oblivious to the panic now spreading across the staff. "Know him?" He shook his head, amused. "This man is David Carter, the CEO of this bank. He owns this place." Gas rippled through the lobby. A teller dropped a pen. A manager standing near the back instinctively took a step forward, as if trying to assess the damage before it was too late. The security guard, who had been watching David a little too closely earlier, suddenly looked very uncomfortable. And the banker, the same man who had smirked at him, who had dismissed his application with thinly veiled disdain, looked like he might pass out. David let the silence stretch for a moment. Let them sit in it. Then finally he stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. "I was here for a loan," he said, his eyes locking onto the banker's. "I wanted to see how my own customers are treated." The room, already quiet, somehow grew even more still. And I saw everything I needed to see. The weight of David's words hung in the air, pressing down on everyone in the room. No one dared to speak. No one dared to look away. He took a step forward, his gaze sweeping over the stunned employees. "Now you understand why I came here today," he said, his voice steady but filled with disappointment. "I've heard the complaints, I've read the reports, but I needed to see it for myself. And what I saw was exactly what I feared." He turned to the loan officer, the man who had barely looked him in the eye before. You didn't judge my financial standing. You judged my skin color and my clothes. You assumed I wasn't worth your time. But let me tell you something." His voice hardened, his presence towering over the now speechless banker. "I built this bank from the ground up. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to walk into a place full of hope, only to be turned away because of how you look. I've lived that reality." His eyes swept over the rest of the staff, each of them frozen in guilt. "And I won't allow it to happen in my own institution." The banker's mouth opened and closed, searching for words. "Mr. Carter, David lifted a hand, silencing him. "Save it." His voice wasn't angry. It was firm, resolute. "What matters now is what happens next." He let his words settle before continuing. "From this moment on, this culture of discrimination ends. Every single customer who walks through those doors will be treated with dignity, respect, and fairness. No more assumptions. No more biases." His voice deepened with conviction. "Because the next person you judge could be the one who signs your paycheck." The weight of that truth sank in. The banker swallowed hard. The tellers exchanged nervous glances. David inhaled, steadying himself. Then, in a softer tone, he added, "Never judge a book by its cover. You never know who's standing in front of you. More importantly, you never know what they've been through to get here." He looked at each employee, his expression unwavering. "Your job isn't to judge, it's to serve. And if you can't do that, you don't belong here." Silence, then, slowly, Mr. Phillips clapped. It started as a single sound echoing through the lobby, then grew as other customers, ones who had been watching the entire scene unfold, joined in. David gave the room one last look before turning to leave. He had seen what he needed to, and now he would make sure that change wasn't just a promise, it was a reality. The very next morning, a company-wide memo was issued, outlining immediate reforms. Employees across every branch underwent mandatory diversity and ethical training with a clear message. Bias had no place in Carter National Bank. Loan approval processes were revamped, ensuring every application was reviewed with fairness and transparency. Customers who had been unfairly denied in the past were invited back to have their cases reassessed. David personally oversaw these changes, making sure no one would ever have to experience what he had that day. Some employees left, unable to adapt to the new standards. Others apologized and worked to be better. The loan officer, too ashamed to stay, handed in his resignation. As David walked out of that branch, he knew this wasn't just about proving a point, it was about changing the system. Never judge a book by its cover.